Before we get into our next topic, which is going to be Solo, the Star Wars story, I just wanted to remind everybody that you guys can, if you like what you hear, if you like this podcast, you can go to saltynerdvideo.com, check out our YouTube channel where we have all of our content there. Like and subscribe, help us out, grow our channel. You can also go to saltynerdpodcast.com, which will take you directly to iTunes and or Android Market, wherever it is that you listen to your podcasts. And of course, if you want to support this podcast, you can go to saltynerdclub.com. Takes you straight to our Patreon. You can throw us a little bit of cheddar and help us grow our podcast and help us continue making great content. We appreciate every little bit you guys do for us, and we hope you enjoy all of our podcasts and all of our content. So saying that, we're going to move into Solo, a Star Wars story, the movie that was put smack in the middle of a perfect storm of anger and hatred, and it suffered.
Coming right off the heels of The Last Jedi.
Coming right off the heels of arguably one of the worst movies ever made.
What was it, like 6 months after The Last Jedi it hit theaters?
Which was a real shame, because I actually, for the most part, we'll get into it. For the most part, I like the movie.
Yeah. And we can talk about the movie first, and then we'll talk about why it did so badly and why some people might not like it at all. But for me, I didn't watch it in theaters because I was boycotting because of The Last Jedi.
Damn you. You're part of the problem.
I was part of the problem. I was like, I'm not going to freaking... What did they just do to Luke? I'm not going to go watch it. No, screw you. I'm not going to go see this movie. And after I saw it on Netflix whenever it came out afterwards, and I was like, well, it's not perfect, but it was a lot more fun than I think a lot of people had given it credit
I
for.
really enjoyed it. I'm glad I saw it in the theater. So is that where it is? I looked on Disney Plus because I wanted to rewatch it.
No, it's on Netflix right now.
Yeah, I should have, because I was like, every single... I thought it was like their way of like, fuck that movie.
No.
I was like, every single Star Wars movie but this one is on here. Yeah.
No, I did have a lot of fun with it. I mean, obviously it has its problems, and I think most of that is because of the drama behind the scenes.
Yeah.
We had two. Lord and Miller had been slated to direct this movie, and they reportedly had done almost like 60% of the film was done.
No, it was like even more than that. There was like the whole villain. The whole villain was recast because Paul Bettany was not the original villain.
Yeah,
I forget who it was.
So it was an actor named Michael K. Williams from. You might recognize him as Omar from The Wire.
Yeah, and he was like an alien.
He was half human, half animal.
Yeah, it was supposed to be like everything I've read about it, I was like, damn, I want to see the Miller and Lord version of this.
See, I
movie.
don't, because when I read about it was according to some of the actors like Emilia Clarke and others and Alden Ehrenreich, they said what it felt like on set while they were filming it is, quote, an Ace Ventura movie. And I was like, no, that would not have been good.
So for people who might not be familiar with it, Phil Lord and what's the guy's name?
Lord and Miller. I don't know the first name. Yeah. Lord and Miller is kind of what they go by.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, Phil Lord and Chris Miller, that's his name.
Yes. Yeah.
They are primarily like comedy directors. They directed the Lego movie and the 21 Jump Street movies and stuff like that. And so their style of filmmaking was very improvisational. Like they would work with the actors and get like a lot of different takes, and then they would kind of assemble it in the editing room to make it like a funny or interesting.
I would still love to see
here's the thing though. So like I actually know someone who worked on Solo, and they said that Lord and Miller's style drove the crew nuts because basically like they would only do like kind of like 3 setups a day, and normally like if you're doing a big budget like movie, you'd have like up to 12 to 13 setups a day. But they would only get like 3 different camera angles on like a different scene, which really limited the editor and what he was able to do in the editing room for dailies. But in addition to that, so they were constantly butting heads with Lawrence Kasdan, who was like the primary like writer and producer on the movie. And
the guy who wrote Solo in Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
Right.
So don't argue with that dude when it comes to Solo.
Exactly.
Well, what they were doing was they were doing up to like 80 different takes of the same scene, like every day.
Damn.
Like they would go to the actors and they'd be like, why don't you try it like this? Why don't you try it? And they would call out lines from like behind the monitor as the scene was going. And Kasdan was like, we wrote dialogue for a reason. We want you to shoot what's on the page. And so what they would do is they would shoot like the first couple of shots would be what was written, and then they would go off for like 8 hours on doing different takes. So like the entire crew and cast would get like really frustrated because they would just keep like, okay, let's go again. They're like, dude, we've done this like 50 times already. And then in addition to that, Lord and Miller had never done a production of this scale before. And when you're doing like big budget sci-fi, you have to be really decisive because you have to tell the different departments like, okay, I'm going to need this. I'm going to need like this type of costume. I'm going to need this type of makeup. I'm going to need this type of prosthetics. I'm going to need this type of special effects. And Lord and Miller, for whatever reason, they just couldn't make up their minds about stuff. They were very indecisive. And so all their production heads for the different departments were getting super frustrated with them because they were just like sitting there and they're like, guys, tell us what you need. Because by the time they get to the point where they have what they need, there's like, oh, let's get this. Oh, it's not going to be ready for 3 weeks. Okay. That type of thing. So the people who were working on this movie were very frustrated. And when Kathleen Kennedy announced that they were firing Lord Miller, the crew literally clapped and it stood up in applause because they were so fed up with these guys. And when Ron Howard came on board, everyone was just
so relieved. I remember hearing that.
Yeah, because he came in and he was like very efficient. He told everyone, "Okay, this is what we're doing." They'd get it in like 3 to 4 takes, and they'd move on, and just like smooth sailing with Ron Howard.
It's just a shame that like certain actors are just completely had to be completely taken out of the movie because the massive amount of reshoots they had to do.
Well, they rewrote the entire story too, right?
Most of it.
No, they didn't rewrite it.
They didn't rewrite the story?
No, they went back to the script by Lawrence Kasdan and his son.
Well,
John.
they reshot most of it is what I meant because they had like most of it in the
From
bag.
what I understood, when Ron Howard stepped in, 80% of the movie was shot. And when he came back, he reshot 70% of that. So there's like 30% Lord and Miller in the movie and then 70% Ron Howard.
Yeah.
But Ron Howard, like Danny said, he had to recast Dryden Voss because Michael K. Williams had scheduling conflicts. And so everything with Paul Bettany in the movie, you can be sure is Ron Howard.
Yeah.
There were other things like, for instance, the scenes at the beginning on Corellia were said to be completely reshot by Ron Howard, and various other aspects.
I actually really liked that scene where he was doing a little speeder chase through the city. I really did enjoy most of this movie.
I liked them. I was really bummed, and it's a shame that the boycott thing was going on. But I mean, it's their damn fault because The Last Jedi was such a terrible.
Yeah, and the other, what else kind of put the nail in the coffin for me not seeing it in theaters? It was on John Kasdan's Twitter. He said something about Lando being a pansexual. I was like, come on. And I was like, no, this is not, I'm not going to go and do this. This is ridiculous.
They really went over the top with that stuff.
I was already irritated with Lucasfilm, the way they had acted with The Last Jedi and their backlash and against the fans who didn't like it. And then to have that in my feed and see that being pushed in a Star Wars movie, I was like, okay, we're not doing this. Which is nowhere in the freaking film.
Well, I mean, by pansexual, do you mean I'm pretty sure he had sex with a droid or something?
It's implied. But it's a throwaway joke line.
Yeah.
It was not anything that was prominent. I don't understand why he had to push that narrative.
I don't think they had to push it. I just think it should have been left the way it was because it was funny.
Yeah, it was a comedy thing.
Yeah.
The thing about that script, though, is so Lawrence Kasdan, I don't think had too big of a role in it. I think it was mostly John driving the writing of that movie, which is one of the reasons why I don't think the movie is all that great. It's not a bad movie in my opinion, but it's just a very mediocre movie, especially for a Star Wars film. And it was also a story that didn't need to be told.
Yeah.
But you can also tell it wasn't a complete story. To me, it felt like they were planning on making 2 or 3 of these.
Yeah.
Well, of course, because everything that we know about Han Solo happens in 24 hours.
Well, no one at Disney was expecting this movie to do as badly as it did. Even if it kind of underperformed, it would have been it only hit $1 billion.
I wish they would have made it like a series like Mandalorian. Because I'm actually genuinely, it's kind of and I'll get a lot of flack for this because I actually like Terminator Genesis and I wish they would release a damn comic book or something so I know the end of that story because it leaves me with I'm interested. And Solo is the same way. I want to know how the rest of that story with the
Darth Maul and the Crimson Dawn.
Crimson Dawn. I want to know the rest of that story.
I would actually be down to see a Crimson Dawn Disney Plus show where we get to see the underworld aspect
Amelia
of Star
Clarke
Wars.
and Ray Park's coming back for Darth Maul and her character.
Because I feel like she was
Kira.
That's right.
I feel like Kira would be if the next whatever the next movie would have been, she probably would have been a badass, like a bad guy, you know, like hardcore bad guy, you know. Where Han Solo is probably going to have to kill her.
Well, I like the idea that his relationship with Kira, it kind of sets him up for having his hard edge towards
exactly,
people, and why he's so mistrusting and doesn't want to get involved in the rebellion.
Is another reason why I think like the plan was probably to have him kill her down the road. You know what I mean? Like that was going to be.
Well, another aspect to this movie, which was problematic, was the casting. So like.
This is Vader's sticking point.
The guy they cast to play Han, which was Alden Ehrenreich. Actually, Disney stepped in during Lord Miller's shooting and was like, whatever you guys are telling him to do is not working. He's blowing it. Like they had to hire an acting coach in the middle of shooting to help him out because he just wasn't able to do what was necessary for the role. And I remember when he was cast, like everyone was convinced that Anthony Ingruber was going to be cast in this movie.
That would have been a no-brainer.
And Lord Miller, one of Lord Miller's big things was casting Alden Ehrenreich.
Because he worked with them on their movie, what was it? Something Caesar with
that wasn't their
George
movie.
Clooney? That wasn't their movie?
That was a Coen Brothers movie.
Coen Brothers. Okay, that's right. Sorry.
Who were you saying originally that you would have rather seen?
Anthony
Ingruber.
Anthony Gruber.
If you go on YouTube and look him up, he does a like spot on Han Solo impression. In fact, he played young Harrison Ford in the movie Age of Adeline.
Yeah. But then you get into the whole thing where people are like,
"Oh wow, he looks a lot like."
Is he doing an impression or is he acting?
Yeah, and honestly, I don't argue with that because it's a valid point. Like, yes, he can do a really spot on impression of lines from a movie that's already been shown. Can he actually act in his own scene?
But he is an actor.
Yeah,
so like if you're doing an impression and acting, like that's what acting is.
Yeah.
So like I think that if you're doing such an iconic character like Han Solo, like you need someone, and even Alden Ehrenreich got some of the voice cadence for Han Solo right, but he just didn't look the part.
I mean, he's too. Oh, you say he's too short.
It's a midget.
He is very small. Like him and Emilia Clarke are almost like eye level.
Yeah, I didn't think
Emilia Clarke's like 4'3", right?
Yeah, she's tiny.
She's tiny.
Physically, I didn't think that the guy that played Han Solo was a good fit at all. I didn't think physically it was. No,
it didn't bother me that much. I mean, the height thing, but I think you can get around with that with camera work.
I mean, the same thing they do with Tom Cruise.
Yeah, same thing to do with all those short actors that are super famous. But yeah, I didn't mind it. I think given a better chance and maybe I don't know. I mean, I didn't hate him as Han Solo. And I think anybody who takes on that role is going to have like big shoes.
Yeah, I don't think he did a bad job, but when I think about what could have been, I get kind of upset. And I would also like to say that this is definitely the worst looking Star Wars movie out of all 9 of them. Because I mean, like the color palette's just very drab. And I remember when I saw it in the theater, it looked so muddy and dark. Like it actually played better on TV because I think one of the issues was that like when they were shooting this thing and they're looking at the monitors, like all the lighting and stuff looks fine, but when it's projected, it kind of loses some of its luminosity. So like it was way darker in the theater and it didn't look good. And when I was watching it on TV last night, I was like, actually, this doesn't look too bad, even though like the color tones are all very like brown and dark.
If you look at the places that they were at, Corellia, a downtrodden, beaten up like industrial complex, and they went to that planet where they were doing that battle. Which honestly, that battle scene was freaking dope. When he was when he was a soldier for the Empire, and he was like in the middle of it.
My argument against that though is like I watched Rogue One right before I watched Solo, and Rogue One has a very muted color palette as well, but like it felt like a much better looking movie. I just think Solo.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I just think Solo. Like the cinematography wasn't as good as it could have been. It's definitely not the best looking of all the Star Wars movies. The script was kind of middling. Like it felt like the movie didn't really get going until they got to Kessel, and like everything before then could have been kind of like restructured to be a little bit more,
faster and more intense.
Yeah.
Let's get into some like one of the issues I had like with the scripts or originality, and I'd like your guys' take. His fucking name.
Solo, a Star Wars story?
No. Like, well,
what's your last name, kid?
But what's your last name, kid?
I don't know.
And that's how this iconic character gets his name.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Isn't that terrible?
That was awful.
I was like,
because it was funny. I think Bo over at Nerd Soup Podcast had made a video about Solo before it came out, and he was like, "These are my expectations. This is what I want to see." And one of the things that he actually said was like, "Whatever you do, just don't go, hey, what's your name, kid? Oh, it's Solo because I'm a loner." And he's like, like months and months and months later, I sent him that clip and I'm like, hey man, remember this? He's like, they freaking did it too, didn't they?
It's pretty damn close. Yeah, it's pretty damn close. Yeah, I couldn't.
That was something that kind of universally upset the Star Wars fandom, I think, where they were like, wait, like
What?
that's how he got his name?
That's how he got his name.
It's the lamest possible way to name that iconic character.
But it was
like that.
interesting also, like them revealing that he used to be a pilot for the Empire. You know, that,
I did like that. That was that's a
But we never got to see any of that. Like he said, he got kicked out because like he couldn't follow orders and they put him in infantry. Yeah. But I would have liked to have seen him like in pilot school.
in the comics and stuff like that. He was a pilot, right? That's what I mean. In like the Legends or the EU back in the day, I'm pretty sure he was a
honestly couldn't
pilot.
tell you.
And there's actually I think there was a comic strip somewhere of him actually flying a TIE fighter and then being told that he was getting kicked out because he didn't follow orders or something like that.
Yeah.
But you know, there's another questionable part in there aside from the naming where he sees the recruitment office for the Empire and they're playing the Imperial theme.
What is that? Diegetic music?
Yeah, diegetic music of the Imperial theme in Star Wars, and it's like, wait. Everyone in Star Wars knows that's the theme for the Empire.
It was a weird like meta
moment.
Yeah, and you're like, wait a second, that's the actual Imperial March? Like it's called the Imperial March, people. Come on.
John Williams lives in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
Well, we know he does. He's a bartender, right? And,
Yeah, he's a bartender in Rise of Skywalker.
Rise of Skywalker. He retired from composing.
I get why people don't like that because it is very meta and it's kind of weird. But honestly, it didn't bother me.
That didn't bother me either. Not so much as the name. And I was actually hoping like the meeting with Chewie. While I thought it was pretty cool how they met, it's like the life pack didn't seem that impactful to me. Like, like what do you think about that? Like, I thought it was a cool scene, but it didn't seem like the kind of thing like, now this dude's going to stick by your side the rest of your life. I had lots of
problems with that scene.
Yeah.
First of all, they never set up how he knows how to speak Wookiee.
Right.
He just like, he just pulls it out of nowhere and he's like, yeah, I speak it a little. And it's like, dude, you could have set that up. And it makes me wonder, like, if maybe they did do that and it was cut out at some point. But the easiest way to do it would have just been like at the beginning when he's in what's that? Ladies.
Corellia and what's her? Yeah, I can't remember her name either. Night something.
Yeah, Lady something. Like Proxima. Lady Proxima. So like when he's in Lady Proxima's lair, just have one of her henchmen be a Wookiee and like have him talk to him like he knows what Wookiees are saying. It would have been that simple. And this movie couldn't even do that. And like you said, my biggest issue with this movie was I felt like the crux of the movie should have been about the relationship between Chewbacca and Han, where almost like a Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid type thing, where we see them meet and we see their bromance form over the course of the film, and by the end of the film, like their relationship is solidified. That's the main. That's really thrust of the story.
That's what it should have been.
And it should have been like that, and it totally isn't. It's like they get it out of the way within the first third of the movie, and then it's not even. It's like business as usual.
Yeah,
and it turns into a heist movie.
Yeah, but like there just wasn't the bond building. There wasn't the building of that bond that I wanted to see, and it just felt kind of like just cheap and easy to me.
Okay, I can see what you guys are saying.
And the main problem that I had is that Han's driving motivation, like his primary storyline in this movie, is between him and the Millennium Falcon. It's about him, like he states it very early on, where he wants a ship. And that's his primary goal throughout the course of the story is he wants to get a ship. He wants to get a ship. And so the weird thing is like the writers and the filmmakers, they all know the Millennium Falcon. They all know how fan base responds to Millennium Falcon. So when he sees the Millennium Falcon, he's like, oh, it's like fate. It's like meant to be. Like, this is my ship. And like his entire, like from the moment he sees the Millennium Falcon, his entire thing is like, I want this ship. But like realistically, like there's a part where he's playing Sabacc with Lando, and he says like he has a VCX 100, which is like the fastest ship in the galaxy, and everyone's like, ooh, VCX 100. Like that should be the goal that he's striving for. Like he wants to get a VCX 100, and then like he has to settle for this crappy YT 1000 Corellian cruiser, type thing, and so like. But the whole point about like him being a good pilot is he can take whatever ship is given to him and fly it like no one else can. And the whole emotional climax of the movie is when he finally gets to sit down in the pilot seat of the Falcon and do the Kessel Run. And even though that's a great scene, like
it really is like
we go back to my big problem with the Star Wars movies in general seems to be like they're just vehicles for set pieces as opposed to actual stories. And that was a great set piece, and it kind of was like the culmination of Han's like, you know, primary story arc in that movie. But he doesn't really own the ship by the end of it. It's just kind of like, oh, he's flying it for the first time with Chewie as his co-pilot, and this is what we get. And we get to actually see him do the Kessel Run. And that was kind of like the payoff, but like it didn't feel earned. It didn't feel set up properly. It didn't feel built up to in a cohesive way.
And that's, I think, a lot of the problem with prequels. I think we talked about in this last episode, where like writers just get kind of lazy because it's like we already know like where they end up. So we kind of like, I feel like they don't take the time to do the proper building of the emotion that would go into it, because they're like, oh, well, people are already attached to this, so it kind of doesn't really matter what we do because they already know how it ends up. And
yeah, like I would have preferred they left all the Kira stuff out, all the Millennium Falcon stuff out, and just focused on Han and Chewie.
Yeah.
And then like show like at a certain point they have to escape, so they get this crappy Corellian cruiser, and all of a sudden like under their pilot ship, like it becomes like, you know, this amazing ship. And like I would have liked to have seen like just the entire show, like Han just being like, this hunk of junk, you know, like I can't believe I my dad used to work on the factory on these things, they're piles of crap. And then like at the moment they need a ship, like he uses it to like just do something amazing, you know, like that's what I would have liked to have
falls in love
seen.
with it at that point.
Yeah.
I can see that. I didn't really have a problem with the use of the Falcon. I thought it was actually pretty good, and I liked the idea that it was like Lando's like prized, clean, pristine, like luxury liner type thing, and then Han gets it and just completely demolishes it. He's like,
like when it breaks down at the end, that was pretty funny.
I love that aspect. So the Falcon thing, I actually think worked for me personally. I really enjoyed it.
I think that was my favorite scene in this whole movie.
Yeah.
No, I love
Lando
that
and
whole
Han
shot.
sitting there. He's like, I hate you.
I know. Did you notice that he did the I know thing?
I know.
I was like,
Yeah,
that's a good callback.
And you know how like Lando keeps calling him Han?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't have a lot of complaints about that, but I always, like, growing up watching the original trilogy, I always felt like the Falcon was like that junky old muscle car that your friend's dad owned, that like you actually get it.
I made a lot of special modifications.
Yeah, I made a lot of special modifications, but he never kept it clean. He never painted it. It was just some rust bucket, but it's got a freaking badass engine in it.
I like to think that he never had the money to like pretty it up again.
Yeah.
He never put the escape pod back on.
Never put the escape pod back in. Like, I like that idea that it's like this old rusty muscle car that just all the money that they had got put into like the engine and how it runs and all that stuff.
But I will say it's kind of interesting because you know, we talked about the robot L337.
Oh, I thought I was going to try to avoid her.
But so she like they upload
Fembot.
they upload.
Why not?
Fembot.
She has a sexy sounding robot. What are you talking about?
But it's funny because they upload her consciousness to the Falcon.
No, they don't.
And in Empire, there's a line where 3PO says like, "This ship speaks the strangest language I've ever heard.
This is the most peculiar dialect.
Yeah,
It's like, I don't understand your ship.
And once we hear like you know like the whole like feminist robot rights L337, now we understand what 3PO is talking about in that moment.
Yeah. So I didn't really like that because I didn't like L3. I thought she. I mean, I don't.
You didn't? I thought she was.
No.
Dude, nobody liked that robot.
What? I thought
But here's the thing, though. Like, I don't.
Lando liked her.
Yeah, Lando loved
Yeah,
her.
Lando liked
I
it.
didn't
Give it
like
to
her. I think it was just because I was so raw from the
I think
Last
she
Jedi.
gave it to him personally.
I was so raw from The Last Jedi and from everything going on online in the fandom that when I watched the movie and I was like, oh, freaking more feminist, you know, blah, blah, blah. But if you look at it in the context of the actual movie, everybody in the movie also thinks that she's annoying and a joke. And then, so it's kind of like, oh, okay, I get it. It's kind of poking fun at itself.
It's kind of like in,
Did you also see Clint Howard's little cameo as like the robot ring wrestler?
I did not notice
Yeah,
that.
so I was actually about to say, since Vader and I are wrestling fans, it's like a good heel. You're supposed to hate them. You know what I mean? So if she's annoying you, she's doing
her job.
Yeah, doing what she's supposed
so
to do.
now that I've had a little bit of retrospective able to look at this movie, I don't mind her as much. But
I still hate her.
she was still annoying. I'm glad that they killed her off like halfway through the movie, though.
I will say
I'm glad I boycotted this movie.
I will say I think the best part of this movie is Donald Glover as Lando Calrissian.
He's great.
I loved him in this movie.
Yeah.
No, he's great.
And you know, like I was never the biggest Lando fan, but you know, when I first saw this movie, I was like, you know what, I'd watch a movie all about Donald Glover's Lando.
Oh yeah,
I thought he did a really good.
No, he
He's
did.
fantastic.
He did a really good impersonation of Lando.
He did.
Of Billy D.
No, he did.
I like his part where he's sitting in the desk and he's like, the Lando Chronicles.
Yeah.
He's recording himself recording it.
And I love his closet full of capes.
Yes.
Yeah. That was a nice touch.
That's awesome.
But
really
I also liked how I felt like this movie settled the who shot first. You know.
Oh yeah.
Han or
That's like an
Greedo.
ongoing thing.
Well, it's definitely like because of the duel at the end, or like
Yeah.
the standoff at the end, where just Han just straight up
Shoots him.
murders that dude.
Yep.
Like, you're like, see, this goes into the character of like he definitely shot
That's
first.
what he learned from that character was he was like,
Beckett.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Beckett is like, you don't wait for them to draw. Like you take advantage of it.
Beckett was the best character in the whole show.
He was pretty cool.
He was
I liked
good.
him.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? So like we talked about the character of who trained Boba Fett earlier, which was
Aura Singh.
Aura Singh. And in this movie, there's a point where Lando's talking to Beckett, and he's like, "Oh, you're Tobias Beckett. You killed Aura Singh." And he was like, "Well, I kicked her. The fall killed her."
Wait,
And
that's
so
in the movie?
That's in the movie. So like Tobias Beckett canonically killed Aura Singh.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, I missed that. That's a nice little nugget.
Yeah.
That's cool. did not know that.
There's all types of like for instance, did you notice that one of the Infus Nest Marauders, the guy named Two Tubes, he's like the
Yeah,
weird
he's
alien
on
with
Saw
something?
Gerrera's.
Yeah, he's in Rogue One as Saw Gerrera's right hand guy in his resistance movement. So there's the connection between those two
I
movies.
did
as well.
I did recognize him. Yeah, Tutu.
Yeah.
He's actually a really cool looking character.
So there's like a lot of those little like subtle connections between the new movies and the Clone Wars and all this other stuff.
Warwick Davis got his cameo. in
Yeah,
there.
Warwick Davis is in there.
Yep.
He's cool. What did you guys think of that? In what's her name? Infus Nest.
Infus Nest.
Infus Nest. Did you guys like her or?
I liked her before she took her helmet off.
Yeah, they should have kept the helmet on her for
Yeah,
sure.
they should have.
Like
Really?
I remember when I was in the theater and she took the helmet off and it was like this weird ginger girl. And that's
rude.
He was like 15 years old.
That was weird.
And everyone was like, I was like, is this a character that we should know? Like why is everyone looking at her like so
It's like,
strange?
yay, girl power.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was like it didn't bother me that she was a girl, but she was really young.
Yeah.
Like oddly young to be doing the stuff that she was doing, like leading some pack of marauders.
but
I
it
was
felt
like,
it
this is
felt
weird.
It felt like that reveal. Like we should have known who she was, and like we don't.
Oh,
Yeah.
like so like without the mask on, she would be a character that we knew of.
Yeah.
And then like now it's revealed
because
that,
when everyone
Okay.
when everyone in the movie reacted when she took her helmet off,
yeah.
like
I was like, hey, you were that person that we dealt with before. Hold on.
I was confused because it seemed like everyone was like, but I guess they were just surprised that she was like a little girl.
Yeah.
It's probably more of that.
It smelled to me like Kathleen Kennedy said, hey guys, the force is female. She's going to be a chick.
It might be.
Yeah.
It might have been.
I actually
something
felt like that was like a Ron Howard decision.
You think so?
I do.
Yeah. I don't know.
Maybe the ginger part.
But so did you guys like? So let's talk about the ending, like right before the standoff with Beckett when he gets basically
when
betrayed by Kira.
Yeah, Paul Bettany, Kira, or I can't remember his name. Paul Bettany, Amelia Clark, and
Dryden
Alden
Voss.
Yeah.
Dryden Voss. They're all in that little. I actually like that like double triple cross thing that happened.
Yeah.
That was kind of cool because it was like it kept getting switched. Like, no, I'm double crossing you. No, I'm actually double crossing you. And then Han's like, no, actually, I knew you were going to do that.
Yeah.
So I double crossed you. I actually really enjoyed that. It was a cool little flip of the script for me.
Yeah.
How did you make these look so real?
They are
They
real.
are.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. What did you think of it? You're the writer. Did that work for you?
I felt like it was clever, but the way they set it up was kind of odd. They did that weird thing where, Solo is kind of revealing his plan to Beckett, and they cut away, and then they cut back after he's done explaining. So like the audience is kind of kept in the dark as to what he's planning, and but it turns out that he didn't actually tell Beckett his real plan. So it's kind of like, okay, that's an odd thing. But I felt it was all very predictable to a certain extent. But for the most part, I felt like it was a fun little kind of twist ending. But again, it goes back to my biggest issue with the film is like, it shouldn't have been about the heist. And I also felt that Dryden Voss was a very bad villain because he was only in like what 3 scenes in the movie.
He was in the party in the beginning, and then at the reveal.
Like he wasn't like a constant presence, and they set up.
Do you think a lot of that had to do with the reshoots? And
No.
Okay.
No, I think it was written that way, and also Infus Nest, who was kind of set up to be the direct antagonist of the characters, where like they kind of interrupt that. Hyper fuel heist.
Oh, how cool was that freaking train heist?
Yeah, I was going to mention that earlier.
It felt like she was going to be like the Darth Vader character of the movie, where she was like the direct, person that they would be fighting against. And then like she just disappears for like, the entire movie until she shows up at the end with her crew. And it like, there was just so many things in this film that didn't feel well thought out or well planned.
They didn't have very long to do it.
Apparently, Lord and Miller were spending all their time doing 80 takes of the same scene.
It's like Ron Howard, if he had to come in and actually like clean up the script and rewrite a little bit of the story, it doesn't sound like he was just trying to get something out that was viable.
I feel like the script for this movie was pretty solid before they went into production, because it was written by the Kasdans, and so
it was just the direction.
And the big conflict between Lord and Miller and Kathleen Kennedy and Lawrence Kasdan was like Lord and Miller were going off script. And so when Ron Howard came in, he just went back to shooting the script that they had agreed to make, instead of like doing all these like crazy like multiple takes and stuff. I feel like this movie was just not very well kind of conceived to begin with, but in addition to that, it wasn't very well written in a structural standpoint. I feel like you could have cut out half the characters in here. You could have streamlined the story. You could have made it more about the emotional core of the relationship between Han and Chewie. And I feel like you could have built up to them flying the Falcon and doing the Kessel Run a lot better and a lot quicker, because the first half of this movie seems like a side quest before they get to like the main, kind of drive of the movie, which is the Kessel Run and the heist to steal the unrefined hyperfuel and stuff. Because that's really when the movie kind of takes off and starts being fun.
Yeah. And I didn't understand or like really the whole Kira love story angle. What did you guys think about that? Like, I didn't feel like it was necessary or needed,
It may have not have been if they had written the story different, but I didn't mind it, because I kind of liked how his motivation for improving his life was to run away with the girl that he loves.
Why is it always about the,
Because it's all about love, man. I just like that. I don't know. I like that idea. It felt romantic to me, and I like the idea that later on that she would end up betraying him, and then that would kind of build that mistrust.
I didn't feel her character was interesting enough, though, to warrant as much time as they spend on her.
It's Emilia Clarke. It was coming straight off the heels of Game of Thrones, man.
Wasn't it more off the heels of Genesis? I thought Terminator Genesis.
I don't remember.
I mean, like.
Both.
For some reason, LucasArts likes using the HBO casting directors, because I mean, Mando was was in Game of Thrones too.
Yeah.
Pedro Pascal. He played.
As long as they don't use D&D, Benioff and Weiss.
But
they tried to.
They tried to. Yeah.
But like, if you look at the character of Princess Leia and her relationship with Han, that's an interesting relationship.
Right, and that's why I felt like they didn't need to go to the.
Well, I mean, I can understand having another love interest for Han, but they just chose a very boring and uninteresting love interest. Like, she basically, like what can you say was like her defining characteristic as a trait as a character?
She was a badass. I don't know. No, she.
But I mean, what makes her unique? What makes her stand out amongst the cadre of Star Wars women?
Right. This is a good question.
I mean, if you put it like that, I guess I don't really know. But I did like her in the way that she fit into that smuggler lifestyle, where she was in it for herself, in it to improve her own standing. She was willing to backstab pretty much anybody.
Toward the end, but like when they introduced her, it was just like this whole puppy love thing.
Yeah, she was just another. It was exactly what.
But it would have been interesting to like if they made her like manipulative or like a femme fatale or something.
Well,
where
they kind of did, didn't they?
Not really.
Not really. Well,
that's
why I feel like it was setting up more movies.
She kind of reluctantly kind of left Han behind.
I didn't get that sense at all.
And you could even argue that she did it as a way to protect him.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I saw that.
Really? Because I kind of felt like by the end reveal that she just never really gave a fuck about him at all.
That's what
I kind of like blamed him for the whole like her being separated, her getting caught.
I didn't get that.
You didn't get that?
I took it as her keeping him out of that world as much as she could.
Really? She was trying to protect him?
Because she knows her world's over. She's going to go work for Maul.
I wish they would have made another one.
No,
now.
see, I got that femme fatale where
That's-
she was like, I don't give a shit about you. I'm in
This
it for
guy.
myself.
Yeah, that's
And-
kind of what I thought at the end. By the end of
yeah,
it.
by the end again.
Yeah.
Whether or not that was set up properly is arguable.
But the thing is, like, she didn't get the hyperfuel. She didn't she didn't kill Han. Like, she literally cut him off so that because she knew like she can't leave. She's locked into.
She's branded, man.
Yeah, she's locked into that, and she didn't want that life for Han. It was kind of like when they were getting off Corellia, she was more concerned about saving him than herself, and he felt guilty for not being able to save her.
Maybe I'm just projecting my own issues with women.
It could be.
what does that say about me?
Yeah.
But I feel like Kira just as a character just is boring. Like she's not a very interesting character.
Well, I just to kind of cap this off, I think this film was a result of a perfect storm of just terrible things happening to it. And I honestly, personally,
and we didn't even touch on the behind the scenes drama. That was
we did.
going
We
on.
talked all about the reshoots.
We didn't go into as much detail. As
we don't have to go into that much detail.
I mean, there's you could make like a 2-hour documentary on like how crazy the behind the scenes
Let's
stuff was.
do that another time. But real quick, I just wanted to say that I do actually think that this movie, specifically Ron Howard, I think deserves, and Lawrence Kasdan deserve to take what the threads that are left over in this story and go either do a Disney Plus series or do another movie.
I would like to see more.
I would like to see more Kira. I'd like to see more.
Maybe not more Han, but more of this aspect of the Star Wars
I
universe.
think like that whole faction, like with Darth. I would love to see more of the Darth
Crimson
Maul.
Dawn.
Yeah, Crimson Dawn. Yeah, I would love to see more of that.
Yeah, I would too.
I would actually like to see a Kira-led series where we see her exploits in the Star Wars underworld, because I just don't feel like I want to see more of young Han and his exploits. Maybe a Lando series. I'd see more of
Lando. I don't really want to see. Yeah, I mean, I think Vader was saying this. I don't want to see any of the Han Solo stuff.
None of it. You just leave it dead.
It does feel like they had ideas to do more of these like Han Solo standalone
Oh,
films.
totally. Because the way that it ends, especially if you're going to reveal Darth Maul like that, I bet Ray Park was like, "Cha-ching, baby, I'm back," and then it's like, nope, it flopped. Sorry.
And the failure of Solo isn't necessarily because of the movie.
Right.
It was a lot of extenuating circumstances.
I don't think it had anything. I think had that Last Jedi shit not happened, or they waited longer, I think the movie would have done a lot better.
Drama, and then it came out around the same time some other really big movies came out.
They pushed it out 6 months early. They abandoned their normal December release date and they put it out in the summer against a very crowded field, and they didn't do a whole lot of marketing for it actually.
Yeah.
Now, Star Wars has always been like a Christmas time thing, right?
With Disney, it has been.
Yeah.
If they wanted to make the ending of that movie
Well,
good,
it was May originally, right?
Hold on, go ahead, Matt.
Sorry,
What's up?
yeah.
if they wanted to make the end of that movie good, they would have had Darth Vader be the reveal.
Darth Vader running Crimson Dawn?
instead of Maul. Yeah.
Ooh.
Anybody.
But Maul's...
Maul was the last second thing that they did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, we got like 3 or 4 different options we can throw in there.
That was a Ron Howard decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which tells me that he's in
And
cahoots with Dave Filoni.
I actually think that they used like footage from episode 1 of Ray Park and they just like
No,
like,
No, they didn't.
no, they
aged
didn't.
him
They
up
brought
or
Ray Park back and
Did
they put him through full makeup and everything. Yeah, I follow him on Instagram. He had a whole post about it and stories and stuff. It was pretty cool.
It took them, 30 minutes. No big deal.
It was more than
Well, he
that.
came back for the Clone Wars too.
Yeah, he did the
motion
mocap.
capture. The
For the
mocap.
final season that we were talking about before, Ray Park came back and did the mocap for the lightsaber fight, which is friggin' phenomenal. That's awesome.
And we also had Tandy Newton in this movie, Maeve from Westworld, and we had Jon Favreau doing the voice of that one alien.
Oh,
guy.
the alien monkey looking thing
Yeah.
that flew the ship. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had some interesting actors. Woody Harrelson,
Yeah.
he was really good as Beckett. I'd watch a
was.
show about him.
Oh yeah.
I want to see him kick that bounty hunter.
I loved his freaking gunslinging style when he was out there in the battlefield,
Yeah,
like
twirling the guns.
around. Like
And
that was
Han's
awesome.
like, I want to know how to do that.
I want to do that.
I'd watch that show with him and Tandy Newton.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would too.
But, I don't, it'd have to be a prequel because they all died.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
I'm tired of prequels.
Yeah.
then there would be no tension. Like who's gonna
So,
die?
ooh, I bet they live.
Well, you could. I mean, what you would do is you would just have him with a brand new crew, and the entire crew would just be expendable except for him.
It'd be like that one episode of The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Like on Rogue One.
Exactly.
On
Yeah.
Rogue One where they all die.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like,
Speaking of Rogue One,
Speaking. What a beautiful segue.